Hello and welcome all the viewers into a new episode of your show around Kuwait, where we shed the light on the most recent events and focusing on the trending occasions. Of course, I'm your host Abdul Latif Lanizi, and today I'm joined with my co-host Hiba. Good evening, Hiba.
Good evening, Abdul Latif, and of course, a great welcome to all of the viewers who are watching us today in our program around Kuwait. As usual, we're going to shed lights about what's happening here in Kuwait, and especially in today's episode, we're going to talk more about with our guests and very interesting topics. So hopefully, everyone will enjoy watching us.
And of course, for today, we have Dr. Manal Al-Hassawi is the founder and managing partner of think tank Strategy Consulting and a strategy consulting firm based in Kuwait that specialized in advisory and learning strategy, strategic foresight and future thinking and design. She is the chairman of the Kuwait Society for Strategic Planning and a not-for-profit established in 2017. She has been advising government members on strategy development, implementation and communication for change for 10 years and more. She is selected as one of the most inspirational persons in Kuwait by those who inspire international organization and was selected as one of the most 60 powerful female leaders by the United Nations Women in 2018. That's really great.
Yes, great. A very beautiful and powerful woman today that's going to shed the lights about her experience, and we'll talk more about her in specific details. Talking more about her, we have in 2021, Dr. Manal Al-Hassawi was featured in the Kuwaiti country report promoted by the BBC as one of the top 10 consultant industry leaders in Kuwait. Now, of course, talking more about her, I mean, a great woman, a very great woman with a great power and, of course, great rule. Talking more about her and knowing more about her within the upcoming interview, I'm very sure everyone is really excited to see her, to know what she's going to present, and I'm very sure even us, Abdul Latif,
I'm really excited actually. I'm really excited for this interview. So welcome Dr. Manal Hassawi, and thank you for being with us here at Around Kuwait. We're so excited to know and to learn more about your achievements.
Thank you so much. I appreciate having me, and I look forward to having a wonderful conversation with you.
Thank you. So as the first question, all of our questions are mostly connected to His Highness Sheikh the Amir, Sheikh Mash'al Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, and as your vision as being a consultant for the leaders for the past 10 years. It's remarkable experience that you have. And of course, for the first question for today, we have: how does the leadership style of His Highness Sheikh Mash'al Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah reflect the principles of democracy and justice inherited from his predecessors?
Absolutely. That's a really, I have to say, that's a really nostalgic question, because that takes me back to think about all of the leaders, the wonderful leaders that we've had and we've been graced by in this country. And honestly, democracy, justice, these are all characteristics that we've seen throughout the years with all of our leaders. So this is a continuation of how the ruling family in Kuwait, the Sabah family, has always led and has always carried on one leader after another. They've always made sure that these are the underlying values, and they have truly embodied the value system that resembles the Kuwaiti community, the justice, the democracy, the well-being of the people. That's something that they have carried on. And with Sheikh Mash'al Al-Sabah as well, that's not going to be any different. He embodies these things, and for me, I think with his military background, which is an interesting bit for me personally. With his military background, we're going to be able to see probably a bit more firmness in the decision making. We're going to be able to see swiftness in the decision making, but certainly these common traits that resemble all of our leaders, with God willing, we're going to see that continue as well down the road.
Yes, indeed, inshallah. And of course, when you're talking about that now, it's very important to also analyze His Highness the Emir Sheikh Mash'al Al-Sabah, especially talking about the foreign roles and the relationship between Kuwait and different kind of countries and regions, when you're talking about whether it's Arab region, international region, and so on.
So there are a lot of changes that are happening around the world, especially when it comes to the power shifts.
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of different momentums take place in the world. Countries that used to be superpowers in the past are losing grip a little bit. Countries that have not been considered to be superpowers are actually rising up in terms of their economy, in terms of their political presence. So you get to see a lot of these differences happen. And of course, because Kuwait has such a sensitive position and a critical position with all of these countries, we can't really negate the fact that we will be impacted and we will impact these different trends that are happening across the world. So in terms of our foreign relations, Kuwait has always carried on as a non-biased middle peacemaker. We've always had the ability as well to intervene and bring about certain resolutions that are favorable to so many parties. And I don't see that changing a lot, but I do see that as leaders in the country that we need to be vigilant of the impact of these different changes that are happening around us and make sure that we understand the implications, whether it's social, whether it's political, it's economic, on how we actually develop our own policies and how we go about our government work.
Remarkable answer. Thank you. Actually, thank you. So can you tell us in what way does His Highness Sheikh Michel commitment to combating and fighting corruption here in Kuwait that aligns with the principles of a good governance?
Absolutely. So with the previous governments as well, we've seen a lot of different initiatives to make sure that we contain the corruption, that we make sure that our policies, that our work, our regulations can actually support anti-corruption initiatives in the government. And with Sheikh Mish'al, I believe probably some of his first decisions that he's taken were taking to make sure that he's got a clear idea of what is happening and probably assessing the current situation and ensuring that there is visibility on the different elements and the working parts of the government before making any kind of permanent decisions for the country. So it's critical that we link, to be honest with you, the idea of change with a lot of the initiatives that are happening right now, and within that, the anti-corruption initiatives. We've seen good momentum happen, especially with the strategy, the anti-corruption strategy, and we've seen some progress in the anti-corruption strategy in terms of our indicators across the world. And this is something that we should be extremely proud for,
yes.
But it needs to continue. We need to build. We need to build on that success.
Yes, and as they say, with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely.
Of course, we're going to continue on that in our interview, but dear viewers, we're going to see part of the speech that's been said by His Highness the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Michel Sabah, and then we'll be back.
إخواني وأخواتي أبناء وطني العزيز، ما أثقل حمل الأمانة وما أعظم إيداء القسم العظيم وما أشد الوفاء بالعهد والوعد. وأنا اليوم قد تسلمت زمام الحكم تكليفاً لا تشريفاً، فإني من خلال مجلسكم الموقر أعاهد الله سبحانه وتعالى ثم أعاهد الشعب الكويتي الوفي كممثلين له أن أكون المواطن المخلص لوطنه وشعبه الحريص على رعاية مصالح البلد والعباد، المحافظ على الوحدة الوطنية، الساعي إلى رفعة الوطن وتقدمه وازدهاره، المتمسك بالدين الحنيف والثوابت الوطنية والدستورية الراسخة، حاملاً لواء احترام القانون وتطبيقه، المحارب لكافة صور الفساد وأشكاله، مستذكراً ما تركه لنا الآباء والأجداد من أمانة الحفاظ على الوطن، ومنفذاً وصية حكامنا السابقين طيب الله ثراهم بأن الكويت هي البقاء والوجود، وإن أعمارنا إنما هي في أعمالنا. وأود أن أؤكد لكم في خطاب هذا استمرار نهج ودور دولة الكويت الريادي مع الدول الشقيقة والصديقة في مختلف القضايا والموضوعات ذات الاهتمام المشترك، محافظين على التزاماتنا الخليجية والأقليمية والدولية.
Welcome back, our D viewers, as we continue after the short break. And today we have some of the questions that left with our Dr. Manal Al-Hisawi. So, Doctor, giving you some of the questions today we have, on your opinion, what is the significance of the historical speech that been delivered by His Highness Sheikh Mishal in outlining a vision for modern Kuwait and a sustainable development?
The vision of Kuwait has been introduced a few years ago, so in around 2010, we've started our national development plans. And we've carried on with the vision since then, with our national development plans and with the different initiatives that we have. So it's wonderful, definitely, to be able to see that this also continues in His Highness's speech, and reference to the vision and reference to the importance of aligning all the efforts on the government level and as well as on the public level to reach the future picture that has been drawn for our country. It definitely has tremendous significance, and it implies His Highness's interest and commitment to making sure or ensuring that this vision becomes a reality. This is what we all hope we will see at the end of the day, where we're able to actually translate those plans and the different elements of the National Development Plan into reality. And we're hoping that we're going to be able to see the commitment that was implied in His Highness's speech cascaded down to government members, to parliament members, and as well as to the Kuwaiti community, or the community that resides in Kuwait. Hopefully we'll be able to see that translated into the actions and the behaviors and the different elements of the plan.
Inshallah. And as we just always say, that this is all for the youth and for the youth themselves, in order for them to achieve that and to reach for the vision itself as it's already planned over there. But also when it comes into talking about the backgrounds, like we've seen so many, let's say, reaching and talking about the history of Kuwait and all of the, let's say, previous emir, and even when it comes into the recent emir that we're having here, Sheikh Mishal Al-Sabah, talking about their background, talking about their role, especially when it comes into the political and the security side, that leads them towards their leadership and the responsibility that they have.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a sensitive situation for us in Kuwait, given our geographical location, given the history of the area or the region that we're in, and it's something that allows us to reflect heavily on the future of our generations and how we would like to build and plan for their security and for their well-being and for the sustainability of the country. So it has been and it will continue that country's security, the way that we will sustain is at the top of every government's priority list. And I don't honestly see that it's going to be any different with this new government. However, I believe that the changing elements around us are going to almost force us to deal with these different trends in a different way. There's a saying that we cannot resolve problems the same way we've created them. Mm-hmm. So the same problems that we're surrounded by, unfortunately, in in what some would call a turbulent region, we're not going to be able to solve them with traditional ways or with ways that have been used in previous situations. So I believe that with this new vision for a different way of being, we're going to be able to look at them in a completely different light, and we're going to be able to utilize our power, our resources, whether they're people or economy, to be able to build a stronger position for the country.
Exactly. Can you discuss with us the impact of His Highness the Emir Sheikh Mishal Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, may Allah protect him, emphasizes on the accountability and adherence to constitutional principles on Kuwait governance?
This is the foundation of who we are. Everything that happens in Kuwait and everything that we aspire to be resides back into the Constitution. And this is the one thing that we all hold on to very, very dearly in this country. And it's our first go-to when we feel any kind of injustice or when we feel any kind of misdoing. So it's one of those elements that give you the sense of safety and that give you the sense of protectedness to know that our highest power in this country has their eye on making sure that everything is constitutional and that we align with the values of the Constitution and that we operate and govern using the Constitution as our guiding beacon. This is very critical for people who are in leadership positions or people who are about to assume leadership positions to as well keep their eye on that beacon, on that guiding light that is the Constitution, to ensure that whatever policies they're engaged in developing, whatever regulations they are engaged in evaluating or developing are aligned with that Constitution to ensure the well-being and the protectedness and the sustainability of the country and its people.
Yes, and of course, may God protect our beloved country and our leaders and of course the whole citizens and everyone who is actually living here in Kuwait. So aside to that, talking and examining the political implications that's actually, let's say especially for of His Highness Sheikh Mishal Al-Sabah, may God protect him, especially talking about the commitment to regional stability, especially talking about, let's say, particularly in the face of evolving global challenges. Now we've seen so many challenges that is actually facing us. I'm very sure that everyone is really associated and well known about that, but talking about that and examining that through our leaders themselves.
Absolutely. So I'll give you a good example about how impacted we are by international trends and things that are happening outside. So I know you all remember COVID, right?
Yes.
2020. It's very difficult to forget, right? Very difficult to forget. So in 2016, there was a report by an international organization called the Institute for the Future. And in that report, they have come up with different scenarios for the next 20, 30, 50 years. And in one of those scenarios, there was a talk about a pandemic. So
possibility or making sure that there is pandemic upcoming?
They talk about the possibilities. So they give you different scenarios, and the worst case scenario was that there could be an airborne pathogen that could create a pandemic that could start on one part of the world, and it's going to have catastrophic impact on the rest of the world, whether it's economic, whether it's economic or social. And if I ask you today to think about something that has completely changed in your personality from that time, I am positive you're going to give me a list, not only one thing. And if I ask you, if I ask you to think about something economic that has changed, if I ask you, so the idea of the outside impacting what we do today is not very far-fetched. And we saw that when COVID hit, because it happened in China, and then we suffered the consequences all the way down to how the family interacted with each other, right? We saw some divorce rates rising, we saw some marriage rates rising, we saw so many different implications of that. And for leaders today, leaders who are currently working with policies and developing rules and laws and regulations and planning for the future of this country, the way we need to look at what's happening around us in the world has to change. We can't assume that because it happened in a very far part of the world that we're not going to suffer the consequences of that. And if we think about that from a political standpoint, that could apply. If you think about it from an economic standpoint,
yes.
If you think about it from a social standpoint, if you think about how education has changed today, if you think about how jobs are going to be different in the next 10 years, all of these elements, you hear them in the futuristic way that His Highness has described the future of this country. And this is how we need to start thinking as leaders in this country and as experts and as people, how we're going to face those different challenges and prepare the next generation for that kind of change that's coming.
Exactly. So in your opinion, what role do you think that His Highness Sheikh Mashal in steering Kuwait towards comprehensive national renaissance and considering developmental indicators?
So we have our development plan, and the progress in this development plan is measured through our position on certain international and global economic indicators, whether they're economic, social, political. Some of them are related to youth, some of them are related to education. So the pillars are different. And it's the progress so far, in my personal opinion, has not been what we all hoped it was, or what we all hoped it to be. But I believe that this upcoming period is going to see a major shift in how committed we are to instilling those different pillars into the very fabric of what we do in this community. It's one of those things that are going to put Kuwait on the map once we are actually progressing on our development plans.
Inshallah, and that is the most important thing. And having that commitment is one of the things that will lead us to reach towards the points that we actually need. Of course, we're going to continue with you, Dr. Manal, but your viewers are going to head to a break, so stay tuned with us.
Welcome back, our dear viewers, as we continue our interview with our dear guest. So welcome back, Doctor. Doctor, as we continue with our questions that we have for today, can you examine the significance of His Highness Sheikh Mashal's leadership on addressing challenges related to Kuwait's parliamentary system and fostering cooperation between branches?
Absolutely. It's, I believe we've seen in the past the results of the misalignment that could happen between the two branches, the government and the parliamentary system. It's imperative for us at this juncture in time that we begin to develop a more efficient relationship between the two, where the parliament is using the tools that are awarded to it in an efficient way, where they are able to hold government accountable, and where government is being as transparent and as forthcoming as they can with the representatives of the public. Until we start seeing this, and I believe that His Highness the Emir Sheikh Mish'al, may God protect him, has alluded to this in his speech. Until we see that alignment happen, then we can actually start seeing progress in terms of the multiple initiatives that we have in the country. And we're starting to see on the ground some of the initiatives and some of the elements where the two branches are beginning to understand that this is something that they have to do. This is how they have to move forward, where they're able to communicate with each other in a completely different way than we've seen in the past, to be able to align with the differences and the changes that are happening around the country.
For a better future, let's say, for a better future for all of us, for the next generation.
Yeah.
We can have better communication.
And I believe the key word here is to communicate. Always try to listen, to find that great balance, because that is what actually connects us, whether as humans and even as a developed country. And that's very important. So aside to that, of course, talking about the most important thing is analyzing the political implications when it comes into His Highness Sheikh Mish'al, may God protect him, talking more about his commitment for being a pioneer in development, especially when we're talking about the progress for Kuwait.
So in the news in the past few days, we started seeing headlines about mega projects that are in the technology field, that are in the infrastructure field. These are projects that have been in the works for quite some time. And to me, that's a very positive signal when I start seeing things that have been dormant for a while.
Yeah.
When I start seeing them pop up again, and I start hearing about a push to study that project a little bit more, or how can we move forward with this idea. I believe that that is a very positive signal that we can attribute to His Highness's commitment to the development of the country. I believe that leaders and officials are beginning to understand that this is the time to progress. This is the time for action. And we're starting to see some of those works come up the ranks little by little, but they're there. So I was very excited, honestly, to see that we're launching a few of the mega projects that have been held back for quite some time. And I can only attribute that to His Highness's commitment and words.
We are really excited actually for these mega projects on the sake of the future of our beloved country and also for the next generations. So coming up to the second question after that, how does the Emir's approach international relations contribute to Kuwait's image on the global stage, and what diplomatic achievements have been notable during his future?
So Kuwait's diplomatic efforts are second to none. They're very well known, and we've got a very unique position around the world, even in conflict-driven areas. We're very well known for our diplomatic attributes, and I believe that this is something that will continue in the era of His Highness Sheikh Mish'al, may God protect him. I believe that it will continue with the same level of respect and diligence, and we will continue to see that position be reflected upon the way these nations and these countries and governments deal and interact with our government and our country in the future.
Yes, inshallah. And of course, we've talked about Kuwait in the beginning, and we said that Kuwait is one of the countries that known for peace and humanitarian work. So when it comes into having that great country with a sense of peace, it comes with a great leader and leadership that represent that peace. So therefore, that leads us to talk more about His Highness, the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Mashal Sabah, may God protect him, and his role in maintaining that peace. And of course, continuing aside to that work itself, when it comes into having that peace represented within the borders in the Islamic region, and of course, aside to, let's say, associated country head.
So our peace and security, I believe, are or have always been non-negotiable when it comes to leadership in Kuwait. And these are at the top of how the ruling family and our highest form of leadership will continue to view the country's sustainability and the country's way forward. Understanding that, we also need to focus on how we can become self-sustaining in face of the different threats and the different elements that happen. We need to focus on food security. We need to focus on water security. And I believe that these are part of our national development plan initiatives. And again, this is why I'm very excited to see that plan get in motion, because we will be able to address a lot of these issues when it comes pertaining to our security and pertaining to our peace. So from the signals that we read as futurists, in the next 20, 30 years, wars are not going to go, they're not going to happen because of political situations. They're not religious wars. They're wars on resources. So it's going to be who's got the water, then who's got the food, and that's why wars are going to take place. And to sustain our security and to sustain our position, considering how delicate our position is geographically and within the region, we need to start thinking about building that security into our systems, building that security into the way that we sustain the country, we sustain the government, looking at being self-sufficient as a country. I believe that should be one of the top priorities that governments and officials need to look at, and that is aligned with His Highness's vision for a futuristic Kuwait.
Exactly. And also all of us, we remember His Highness speech about combating and also fighting corruption here in Kuwait. We all of us remember, but let's hear it one more time, and after that we will be back talking and discussing more about His Highness speech. So for your viewers, let's listen to His Highness speech about combating, fighting corruption, and we will be right back.
إخواني وأخواتي أبناء وطني، أكدنا في خطاباتنا السابقة بأن هناك استحقاقات وطنية ينبغي القيام بها من قبل السلطتين التشريعية والتنفيذية لصالح الوطن والمواطنين. وبالتالي لم نلمس أي تغيير أو تصحيح للمسار، بل وصل الأمر إلى أبعد من ذلك عندما تعاونت السلطتين التشريعية والتنفيذية واجتمعت كلمتهما على الإضرار بمصالح البلاد والعباد. وما حصل من تعيينات ونقل في بعض الوظائف والمناصب التي لا تتفق مع أبسط معايير العدالة والإنصاف، وما حصل كذلك في ملف الجنسية من تغيير للهوية الكويتية، وما حصل في ملف العفو وما ترتب عليه من تداعيات، وما حصل من تسابق لملف رد الاعتبار لإقراره لهو خير شاهد ودليل على مدى الإضرار بمصالح البلاد ومكتسباته الوطنية. ومما يزيد في الحزن والألم سكوت أعضاء السلطتين التشريعية والتنفيذية عن هذا العبث المبرمج لهذه الملفات وغيرها مما أسبغ عليها صفة الشرعية، وكأن الأمر أصبح بهذا السكوت يمثل صفقة تبادل المصالح والمنافع بين السلطتين على حساب مصالح الوطن والمواطنين.
Welcome back, dear viewers. Of course, we'd like to welcome again with us our beloved guest, Dr. Manal Al-Hassawi. Now, we've been talking ongoing when it comes into leadership on how important is having such great leaderships, especially within the Al-Sabah family. As we just said, they had their own roles previously and they are continuing. Talking more about the role that His Highness, the previous Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Nawaf Ahmed Jabir Sabah, may he rest in peace, and of course on continuing aside to his message and role in different kind of aspects of Kuwait with His Highness the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Mish'al Al-Sabah, may God protect him and keep him safe. Within that, we'd like to talk more about how important is having ongoing, let's say, with the role of our previous leader and now leader in trying to continue to reach towards peace, to reach towards how developing the country is. Aside to that is fighting the corruption that is actually happening within different kind of aspects as previously had been dealt and still ongoing.
So let me just discuss corruption from, let's say, more of a macro level. When we talk about corruption and when we talk about all the different initiatives that we're using for anti-corruption. So corruption is not something that is unique to our country, and we're able to see that everywhere, and it manifests in different communities and in different countries in a completely different way. The way that we have seen corruption manifest in our country has been addressed by our late Amir, may God rest his soul, Sheikh Nawaf Ahmed Al-Sabah, and these efforts have continued and will continue with our current Amir, Sheikh Mish'al. The one thing that we're starting to see in terms of combating corruption is the institutionalization of a proper infrastructure and system within the government.
Exactly.
And we saw that in probably one of his first decisions that he made when he asked for all hiring and transitioning within the government body to be put on hold. And that is an indication that there is a reform on the way when it comes to probably the selection of leadership, the way leadership is going to transition within the government body. And we're hoping, and I'm personally hoping, that we will revisit the idea of a more leaner government, a more automated government. I believe that these are some of the things that are going to allow us to practically combat corruption. The minute we leave things up to human intervention, that's when we fall into the different personal agendas that might impact a specific process within the government. But if we've got a leaner government, if we've got a government that is built on very clear, very well-established systems, things with minimal human intervention, we're going to start seeing a major shift in the way that the government will serve the public which is the major role for why governments exist today.
I think there's going to be a major change in all of the countries' shape because of having a change on that way, fighting the corruption, even on the leadership, on that way, on that matter. By his Highness speech after the constitutional oath, we actually have a really big hopes on fighting the corruption, but also talking about his first decision on, let's say, changing the system through the governmental leadership. Let's talk more about, on your opinion, about, let's say, on the private sector corruption. There are corruption in the private sector, and we've seen that. Do you think that there's going to be, like, let's say, a much change after the change that we are seeing right now?
So you said my opinion. So
Yes,
I will tell you my opinion. The way our private sector operates in Kuwait, it's not the optimum way that a private sector should operate. Now,
exactly.
In the beginning of the country, when Kuwait was first constituted, we had a proper private sector that was running the majority of the operations in the country, and we had a very lean, very small government that was legislating for the private sector. What happened now is that we've got a huge government, a very large government that is actually operating, right? So electricity ran by the government, public works is run by the government,
yes.
Which is actually causing the private sector to wait for government to be able to actually operate. So I'm a private sector that is dependent on the government. Now, whatever that government's work is, and whatever the way that the government is operating in, that's going to translate back into the private sector. I'm not 100% defending the private sector, but I'm also ensuring that we're not disconnected. So I don't have a completely disconnected private sector from the government body. So if I do have a corrupt system somewhere in the government, that's going to translate back into to affect the private sector. That's going to affect whether we as citizens want to engage in the SME sector, right?
Yes.
Do I want to go and open a business, and do I want to engage in a private sector where I'm not able to truly operate until there is a government contract, because the government is the operator. Now, once the government relinquishes that role, and that's actually, again, that's one of the initiatives in the National Development Plan. That's what the plan is supposed to take us down to, is a leaner government, a smaller government, a government that regulates, that monitors the work of a private sector that is completely operable within this country. So I believe that once that distinction happens, and once we're able to see that transformation in the government, we're going to be able to see a more productive private sector in the country.
Yeah, like I can relate that as the relationship between the mother and her child, you know, like having the government as a mother and trying to, let's say, let her child go and just be, you know, that's the private sector. So hopefully, let's say the mother will reach towards a point where she could actually raise her child and let them go and explore. She needs to
relax.
Yes.
All mothers need to relax.
Indeed.
Just relax and let them do their thing.
Indeed. Yeah. So talking about government sector, talking about private sector, that leads us to talk more about economy. I mean, that's the most important thing, is to rise the economy of Kuwait. And having that said, is very important. It's not only for our leaders and even the government or private, but even when it comes to the citizens themselves, you know, dealing with that. We've always heard that the country is having a future vision for the upcoming years, that we're going to have an economical, sustainable, let's say, resources and incomes and so on. So it's not only depending on the government and the leaders, but also depending on the side with the citizens themselves. And having that said, let's say the government, or let's say the leaders, are going to fight the corruption. Therefore, they're going to give an opportunities for everyone to grow and have their, let's say, print on the economic system itself. So how do you see, from your own point of view, that kind of vision that's going to be accomplished for the future economic system here in Kuwait?
So our economy still depends very heavily on oil. And one of the major tracks in the National Development Plan is to diversify our income. Now, it's a very simple statement when we say we need to diversify our revenue stream in the country, and we need to make sure that we've got alternative sources of income and of revenue in the country. It's very simplistic, and it's a major sin to simplify it to that point.
Exactly.
To be able to actually diversify my income and to be able to access different ways of sustaining the economy, there are foundational steps that I have to do. One of those foundational steps is I need to revisit my educational system. So if I'm saying that I need to build the industrial sector in Kuwait, and I have to start building that sector, building the technological sector. We need to start seeing more factories in Kuwait. We want more production in the country. I need to start looking at the foundations of that statement. I need to look at the education system. Am I gearing my generations of learners towards the future types of economies? So we've got the knowledge economy as one of our main goals in the National Development Plan. And the knowledge economy depends on a different type of worker and a different type of citizen. A citizen that generates knowledge with that, where that knowledge is a currency, where I'm able to actually trade and monetize that knowledge. What am I doing today to prepare my generations? What am I doing to prepare the graduates that are coming out of our educational system to engage in that kind of learning and engage in that kind of economy?
Yes.
We're getting into something called the gig economy today, where people don't want jobs. And we're starting to see that. People don't want college education. The applications for Harvard and for Yale have dropped 48% in the last 4 to 5 years. People don't want jobs anymore. People understand that they can go, I can do a job for you, I can get paid, and I can leave, and I can go and do it, so I can do gigs. What are we preparing to be able to access that kind of economy? So saying that I want to diversify my income, I want to make sure that I don't depend on oil, that's not the job of one part of the government. So that's not the job of the the Supreme Council of Planning. That's not by themselves, or that's not just the job of the Ministry of Education by themselves. They need to be sure that they work across the government to be able to resolve issues like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Manal, for being here with us, sharing your experience. Having a person like you, having this remarkable experience, this remarkable journey, it was actually really helpful to know and to analyze all of the information that we wanted to know about the leadership of His Highness Sheikh Mash'al Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah. May Allah protect him. Thank you for being here with us. Unfortunately, our episode had come to an end. And thank you one more time.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And for you, our viewers, we would see you for the next time. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. And remember, with every new day, there is going to be even more episodes discussing new topics or having other guests sharing their experience with us. So for now, we would see you for tomorrow. Stay safe and goodbye for now.